For 20 years, I had believed in the strength of my marriage to Jessica. We were happy, or at least that's what I thought. I had always worked hard to provide for our family, to give Jessica everything she wanted: luxury, stability, and the comfort of knowing she was well taken care of. In return, I believed in her love, in the passion we shared, in the life we had built together. We had a daughter, Sarah, who was in her second year of college, and Jessica was a successful assistant to Mark Diamond, the managing partner at a prestigious law firm. I had always been proud of her success, proud of our family. But everything changed the night I saw her get ready for another man. It started out as a normal evening. I had just returned from a long day of work, hoping to spend some quality time with Jessica after being away for a few days. I was eager to see her, to be with her, to hold her. What I didn't expect was to witness the painful scene that unfolded before my eyes. I watched her carefully as she stood before the mirror, applying makeup, fixing her hair, and slipping into a dress that I had never seen before. The dress was tight, seductive, and completely unfamiliar. It was as if she had transformed into someone else, someone who wasn't my wife. I could see her slipping into stockings, adjusting her outfit, and finishing the look with a pair of high heels that clicked against the floor with every step. I felt a rush of emotions: betrayal, jealousy, and anger, all swell deep within me. This wasn't for me. This wasn't for our marriage. No, this was for Mark Diamond, her boss. I had seen the signs before, but I never imagined it would come to this. I had been concerned a month ago after the company dinner when Mark had paid more attention to Jessica than I was comfortable with. He had even danced with her, and I could sense the smug satisfaction in his smile as he looked at me afterward. That night, something had clicked inside me, a gut feeling that something was wrong. I had tried to dismiss it, but the nagging feeling kept growing worse as the days went on. I told Jessica about it the next day, trying to explain my concerns. Instead of reassuring me, she defended Mark. Her reaction made my suspicions grow stronger. Too many late meetings, missed lunches, and sudden changes in her behavior all became red flags I couldn't ignore. I knew something was off, and I needed to find out what was really going on. Jessica had always been attentive to our relationship. Our sex life was fulfilling, and she always made me feel loved. I had no reason to doubt her commitment. But now, everything was coming into question. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my instincts had been right all along. Mark was a wealthy, arrogant man who loved to flaunt his success. He drove expensive cars, wore flashy jewelry, and surrounded himself with the best things in life. His young wife, Stella, was a trophy in his collection, an image he liked to show off. Mark had a knack for making others feel inferior, and he had done just that when he mocked my work in front of Jessica and others during one of our social gatherings. I sold screws and fasteners to large retail stores. It wasn't glamorous work, but it provided a good living. I earned over $200,000 a year, and I was proud of it. I took care of Jessica and Sarah, and I made sure they had everything they needed. But Mark, with his extravagant lifestyle and his sharp, condescending remarks, made me feel small. And the worst part was seeing Jessica laugh at his jokes. She had defended him, telling me that I was taking it too personally. "He's just joking, baby," she said, brushing off my concerns. But deep down, I could feel that something wasn't right. I stayed at the dinner, pretending everything was okay. But inside, I was fuming. I should have seen the signs, but I didn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I might have been too naive. Mark was everything I wasn't: rich, powerful, and confident. He was a man that others looked up to. Jessica worked closely with him every day, and I knew how much she admired him. It was no wonder he was able to get under her skin. She was his trusted right hand at the firm, and the attention he lavished on her was enough to make any woman feel special. Over the next week, my suspicions only grew stronger. I needed to know the truth, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I began implementing a plan. I wasn't just going to sit around and let my instincts go unchecked. I purchased several audio recording devices and video cameras, each with live streaming capabilities and wireless connectivity. I installed them in strategic locations around the house. One in the smoke detector of the bedroom, two in the living room, and others in the master bathroom and her car. I also placed smaller recording devices in her purses and a pen-sized audio device near the kitchen phone. I wanted to capture everything, every conversation, every moment. I had to know the truth. A week later, I was ready to leave for a business trip, but I wasn't ready to give up on my plan just yet. Jessica had been loving and affectionate, just as she always had been. We made love the night before I left, and she told me how much she loved me. Her words were sweet, her touch gentle. But now, every time she said, "I love you," all I could hear was the thought of her with someone else. I left the house the next evening, heading out for a 2-night business trip. I tried to push my suspicions aside as I drove to the hotel, but I couldn't. The thought of Jessica and Mark kept creeping into my mind. I needed to find out if I was being paranoid or if my fears were justified. When I arrived at the hotel, I logged into the server in my attic and began watching the footage from my cameras. I knew there wouldn't be much to see, but I needed to test the system. I played the footage at 3x speed until I saw Jessica in the bedroom. I slowed it down to normal speed, watching as she made a phone call. What I didn't expect was the conversation I heard next. "Hello, honey," she said, her voice soft and seductive. "He left, and I'm all alone. Yes, this time for 2 nights. When can you come?" My stomach dropped as I listened to her invite Mark to spend the night with her. "Oh my God, this is great! Can you spend the night with me? I really want to wake up next to you." Her words made my blood boil. We had just made love the night before, and now she was planning to have sex with him. I continued to watch as she prepared for Mark's arrival, showering, putting on sexy lingerie, high heels, and makeup. Every step she took, every gesture she made was for him, not for me. The anger and jealousy that surged through me were overwhelming. How could she do this? How could she betray me so easily? Just minutes later, the doorbell rang, and there he was, Mark. I watched in real time as he entered our home, kissed Jessica deeply, and made his way to our bedroom. I felt sick to my stomach. This was my home, my bed, and my wife was leading him into it. I watched them undress, heard them talk about how much they wanted each other, and I couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't just a betrayal of my trust. It was a violation of everything I had ever believed in. How could she do this to me? As I sat there watching the screen, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I saw Mark, the man who had humiliated me, kissing my wife in the very house I had worked so hard to provide. I had given Jessica everything: my love, my loyalty, my time, my soul. Yet here she was, in our bed with another man. The feelings of betrayal, anger, and humiliation overwhelmed me to the point where I could barely breathe. I watched them, powerless, as they laughed and kissed, completely oblivious to the cameras capturing their every move. I was nauseous. My hands trembled as I turned off the computer and sat there in silence. What could I do? What was left for me to say to her? The woman I loved was now sleeping with my worst enemy. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but I knew I had to remain calm. There was no going back now. The idea of confronting them immediately made my blood boil, but I knew that would come later. For now, I had to think, strategize. This was my marriage, my life, and I had been treated like a fool. How had I missed all the signs? How could I have been so blind? The love I thought we shared had been nothing more than a mask hiding the truth of her betrayal. The next few days were a blur. I spent hours replaying the footage over and over again. I could see every detail: the way Mark touched her, the way she responded to him. The intimacy between them was evident. This wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper. She had led him into our home, our life, and now I knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't just let this slide. I needed revenge. I needed to make them both feel the pain I was experiencing. I began preparing my plan. I was going to make Jessica regret every moment she had spent with Mark. But I also wanted to make Mark pay for what he had done, for the damage he had caused my life. I wasn't going to sit back and let him get away with this. I knew exactly where to start. Jessica would have no idea what was coming. I had already installed hidden cameras around the house, in the car, and in her purses. But now, I needed to take things further. I knew that the moment I confronted them, everything would change. I needed to get every last detail, every last piece of evidence to make sure I had the upper hand. It was time to move forward. The following week, I set everything in motion. I continued acting like everything was normal with Jessica. I was kind to her, affectionate even. But deep down, I was filled with disgust. Every kiss she gave me, every hug felt like a lie. But I played the part well. I kept her close, made sure she didn't suspect a thing. One evening, as I sat in the living room, she walked in, asking me when my next business trip was. She didn't seem suspicious, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty. But I quickly reminded myself of what she had done. There would be no sympathy for her. I told her I had to leave the following Tuesday, and she seemed almost relieved. I had a feeling she was looking forward to another night with Mark. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to make sure I caught them red-handed. It was time for my plan to unfold. On the day I was supposed to leave, I pretended to pack for the trip. I even kissed her goodbye, telling her I'd miss her. But instead of leaving, I drove straight to my office. Once I arrived, I parked the car and took out the electric bike I had purchased for this exact moment. The bike was quiet, stealthy, and would allow me to get home without anyone noticing. I needed to catch them in the act, and this was the only way. It was a 12-minute trip, and I made sure no one saw me leave. When I got home, I parked the bike behind the house, took out the shotgun I had hidden in the closet, and carried it into the bedroom. I also grabbed an aluminum bat. This was not just about getting revenge. It was about making them feel the fear, the anguish I had been carrying. I walked to the bedroom door, and I could already hear them laughing, talking. The sound of their voices made me sick, but I remained calm. I had been planning this moment for days, and nothing was going to stop me now. I opened the door quietly, taking in the sight of my wife and her lover. The room was dimly lit, candles flickering around the bed. Mark was shirtless, his muscular frame on display, his arrogant smile evident even in the low light. Jessica was lying next to him, wearing nothing but the lingerie she had put on just hours earlier. The rage inside me boiled over, but I controlled myself. I stepped forward and swung the bat, landing a heavy blow to Mark's head. The sound of metal hitting flesh was deafening, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Mark collapsed to the floor, dazed and confused, blood streaming from a wound. Jessica screamed, her eyes wide in shock. "What are you doing?" she cried. "You shouldn't be here. This is insane." I didn't say a word. I just walked past her, picked up the shotgun, and aimed it at Mark. He was still trying to regain his bearings, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I wasn't going to kill him, not yet. But I wanted him to understand the gravity of what he had done. "You think you can just waltz into my life and steal my wife?" I said, my voice cold and calculated. "You think there are no consequences for this?" Mark struggled to sit up, his hand pressed to his bleeding head. "You're insane," he spat. "What do you want? You can't do this." "Oh, but I can," I replied, stepping closer. "You're going to pay for this, and so is she." Jessica, now frantic, tried to shield Mark. "Please don't do this," she pleaded. "It's not what you think. I love you, Johnny. I never meant for this to go this far." Her words cut me deeper than any knife could. How could she sit there and tell me she loved me after everything? I had been a fool to believe her all these years. I aimed the shotgun at her, not with intent to hurt her, but to show her how far I was willing to go, to make them understand the pain they had caused. "Shut up, Jessica," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You wanted this. You wanted the excitement, the adventure. Well, here's your consequence." I wasn't planning to kill anyone tonight, but they needed to feel the terror I had felt, the dread of knowing that everything you once believed in was gone in an instant. Mark, still lying on the floor, tried to crawl away, but I was faster. I kicked him hard,
the pain radiating through his body. He gasped, the pain intensifying. But I wasn't done with him yet. I made sure he understood that there would be no easy way out of this. "You will never have her," I said quietly. "She's mine. You've taken everything from me. But I will make sure you both remember this night for the rest of your lives." The next moments were a blur of actions, of words, and of pain. Mark, his face now contorted in agony, begged me to stop. Jessica, now on the verge of tears, tried to intervene, but it was too late. The damage had been done. "I'm not going to kill you," I said finally, lowering the shotgun. "But I'm going to make sure your life is ruined, just like mine has been." I spent the next few minutes explaining to both of them what would happen if they dared to defy me. I had every piece of evidence: videos, photos, recordings. I had them all stored securely, and I would make sure the world knew what they had done. I had no plans to let them go quietly. The humiliation, the suffering would follow them wherever they went. "You'll be the ones living with the consequences," I said, my voice unwavering. "And when this is over, you'll wish you never crossed me." And the moment I lowered the shotgun, leaving them both shaking and fearful, I knew that the power I held over them wasn't just about physical violence. It was about control. I had spent years building a life with Jessica, trusting her, loving her, and providing for her. And now, in one single moment, she had shattered it all. She had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way, and I was not going to let that go easily. Not for her, and certainly not for Mark. They were both still trembling, their faces pale, their hearts racing. Mark, lying on the floor, had a look of panic in his eyes, while Jessica was crying, her body curled into a ball, trying to cover herself with a thin sheet. It was pathetic. This woman, the one I had loved for 2 decades, was now a stranger to me. She was no longer the woman I had promised to grow old with. No, she had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I stood there watching them, letting the silence stretch between us. I wanted them to feel the weight of their actions, to understand the magnitude of their betrayal. But I wasn't just going to let them off with a scare. No, I had plans for them. Plans that would leave an indelible mark on both of their lives. They would never forget what they had done to me. "You think you can walk away from this without consequence?" I asked, my voice low and menacing. "You think I'll just let this slide? I gave you everything, Jessica. Everything. And this is how you repay me?" She sobbed harder, but I wasn't interested in her tears anymore. Her excuses didn't matter. Her apologies didn't matter. All I saw now was the woman who had destroyed my life, the woman who had been unfaithful to me with my worst enemy. "Mark," I said, turning to him with a cold smile, "you think you can get away with this? Sleeping with my wife in my house, in my bed? You have no idea what kind of man you're dealing with." Mark tried to sit up, still dazed from the blow to his head. He attempted to muster some courage, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He was no longer the arrogant, confident man he once was. No, now he was just another coward hiding behind lies and deceit. "You don't scare me," he spat, his voice weak. "You're just a pathetic man. You don't deserve her." His words were meaningless. I could see the desperation in his face. He knew he was trapped. He knew there was no way out of this. I had all the power now, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. I took a step closer to Jessica. Her eyes were wide with terror, but there was something else in them too. Regret, guilt. But it was too late for that now. She had crossed the line, and nothing she could say would change the way I felt. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The love I once felt had been poisoned by her actions. "You've ruined me, Jessica," I said, my voice steady, calm. "You've destroyed everything we built. But don't worry. I'll make sure you don't forget this." I grabbed my phone from the table, unlocking it with a swipe. I had already prepared everything. Videos, photos, messages, all the evidence of their affair, all the lies they had told me. I had been recording everything, gathering every piece of their betrayal. It wasn't just about scaring them anymore. It was about ensuring that they would both pay for what they had done. I opened a folder on my phone, showing Jessica the images and videos. Her face turned pale as she realized what I had. The proof was undeniable. Her in my bed with Mark. Their passionate encounters. The conversations they had shared. She couldn't deny it. It was all right there. "I'm going to send this to everyone," I said, watching her face crumble. "Your friends, your family, your colleagues, all of them will know what kind of woman you really are. The truth will come out. Everyone will know about the lies, the deceit, and the affair you had behind my back." Jessica's breath hitched. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing her. "You don't get to explain yourself anymore. You had your chance. Now you'll live with the consequences." I took a deep breath, my anger still burning inside me. "You'll be the one who has to face the fallout. Your family, your friends, the people you work with, they'll all know who you really are. You'll be the one who has to live with the shame of what you've done." I turned to Mark, who was still sitting on the floor, trying to compose himself. "You," I said, my voice dripping with venom. "You'll never get another chance. You're done. You're nothing more than a failure, and I'll make sure everyone knows that too." I had no intention of physically harming them any further. The pain I had inflicted on them so far was enough, but the emotional and social damage I planned to unleash would be far worse. I would make sure that everyone knew the truth. I would ruin their lives the way they had ruined mine. I opened the app on my phone and began sending the videos to every contact I had, every friend, every colleague, every family member. Within minutes, it was done. I had exposed them to the world, and there was no going back. "You think you're going to get away with this, Jessica?" I asked, turning back to her. "You think you'll still be able to live the life you had? No. You'll be nothing. You'll be a pariah. And Mark, he'll be the same. You've both lost everything. Everything." Jessica was sobbing now, her body shaking with the weight of what was happening. Mark, still recovering from the blow, was no better. The life they had worked so hard to build was crumbling before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "Please, Johnny," Jessica pleaded, her voice desperate. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen like this. I love you. I didn't want this to destroy us." I laughed bitterly. "Love? Don't talk to me about love. You don't get to talk about love after what you've done. I gave you everything, and you threw it away for him." I didn't want to listen to her anymore. I didn't want to hear her excuses or her apologies. It was over. There was nothing left for us to salvage. As I turned to leave, I heard Jessica's broken voice call out one last time, "Please don't leave me. I'll do anything to fix this." But I was already gone. I had made my decision. The woman I had loved was no longer the person I had married. She was a stranger, and so was Mark. The next few days passed in a blur. Jessica and Mark both tried to contact me, but I ignored their calls. I had no intention of speaking to either of them again. I had given them the chance to come clean, to make things right. But they had betrayed me, and now they would pay the price. The divorce proceedings began soon after. I didn't drag it out. I made it clear that I wanted out of the marriage, and I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I had already ensured that Jessica's reputation was ruined beyond repair, and I wasn't going to let her off the hook.